Gale, you're in charge of the Southern California office of Corporate Research Associates, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Is your firm nationwide?
Yes, we have 35 offices throughout the country.
As now, you stated that the information in your report on Kevin Ireland was completely accurate.
Yes, I did.
Or would it surprise you then to learn that while your report stated that Mr. Ireland has 2 children, he does in fact have only 1? And that while your report stated that Mr. Ireland graduated from the UCLA School of Business Administration, he did in fact graduate from the Engineering School of USC.
Well, I meant to say that the significant facts were accurate. These things that you're mentioning now, in my opinion, are of no great significance.
But they are errors. Errors which tend to question the accuracy of your investigators and their reports.
We have honest and reliable investigators. They are carefully trained never to include anything in their reports other than the precise, unadorned information that they have gathered.
In other words, because you know your investigator is honest and reliable, you're satisfied that he has picked up accurate, significant information, and you then pass it on.
Yes, we do.
But what if you get a negative report on someone? I mean, a report of great significance, a report that could damage or destroy a man's career. Now, I assume reports of this kind, the significant kind, are then double-checked, are they not?
No, that wouldn't be possible.
Not possible? Why not?
Well, because we are a business. We provide a service, and industry is only willing to pay so much for that service. Men that are hired on the basis of our reports generally prove to be very good executives.
Yes, but what about the good executives not hired because you file negative reports on them, some of which may be inaccurate?
Well, I have to challenge the word inaccurate. As far as I know, our investigators...
Yes, I know. They're honest and reliable. But the sources, the people your investigators talk to, how do you know they're honest and reliable?
Well, we assume they are.
You assume? How can you assume a person doesn't have an ulterior motive?
Well, if that comes through, I mean, if it's obvious, then that information is not included in the report.
But if it isn't obvious, you still send out the information, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. That's argumentative questioning.
Objection sustained.
I'll rephrase my question, Your Honor. Your investigators gather information from other people. Do you ever check on them, the other people?
No, we don't.
Now, how many reports per day does the average investigator make?
Well, that depends. I would say the average is 10 to 15.
10 to 15 a day? You mean a man can actually investigate 10 to 15 people in one day? I find that astonishing.
Well, there again, you see, it's a matter of economics. Now, I would give anything to be able to charge prices that would allow us to hire more men. But our clients simply won't pay anymore. So we do the best we can. And I might add that we do one hell of a good job.
I'm sure you do. And to do one hell of a good job, you must have highly qualified investigators.
Yes, of course, we do.
How highly qualified? Do all your men have degrees in psychology, sociology, or other related social sciences?
Well, no.
Do all your men even have college degrees?
Over half have attended college.
You're not answering my question. How many of your investigators have college degrees in any subject? How about 20%?
That's about right.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect, Mr. Skinner?
No, Your Honor.
The witness may step down. Your next witness, Mr. Skinner.
We have no further witnesses, Your Honor. The people rest their case.
Very well. Is the defense ready?
We are, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
We have only one witness to call, Your Honor, the defendant, Mr. Kevin Ireland.
Put it down!
Mr. Ireland, did you make forceful entry into the offices of Corporate Research Associates on the night of June 21st?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you do any damage to the property while you were there?
Yes, so I did a great deal of damage.
Now, would you tell the court why you did these things?
Well, I did them because, because Corporate Research Associates libeled me and
Object.
slandered me.
I object, Your
and
Honor.
defamed my reputation. Mr. Nichols. Mr. Nichols.
May we approach the bench, Your Honor?
Please do.
Corporate Research Associates is not on trial here, Your Honor. Now, the defendant stands accused of a serious crime. He allegedly destroyed over $50,000 worth of private property. Now,
Your
that's
Honor, there are mitigating circumstances in this case. The defendant has been deprived of earning a living for 2.5 years. His reputation and his career have all but been destroyed, and his marriage has been destroyed. If, through the patience of the court, we're allowed to pursue this line of questioning, the defense will show its relevancy to the charge.
I will allow you to pursue this line of questioning for the moment. But caution Mr. Island to confine himself to facts.
I'm sure my client understands, Your Honor.
Read the last question, please.
Now, would you tell the court why you did these things?
Do you understand the question, Mr. Ireland? I don't know where to begin. Begin wherever you like. Well, I'm what is known as an international marketing and merchandising expert. I worked in that capacity for 12 years as an executive for the Crawford Company. Until one morning I woke up and at the breakfast table I read in the newspaper that the Crawford Company had been absorbed by a conglomerate company called Transcoastal Industries. Well, naturally, the Transcoastal Corporation brought in their own people, and they let many of the executives of the Crawford Company go, and myself included. Well, it was a pretty rough time for most of the fellas, but I've always been an optimist, and I looked on it as a kind of an opportunity.
What are you so happy about?
Oh, Fred. Oh, the future.
Oh, yeah. I used to have one of those. I seem to have lost it somewhere around the age of 40.
Oh, what's wrong, Fred?
I'm 42 years old and out of a job. And in this day and age, that's just about the end of the line.
Oh, Fred, you can't think about it like that. You gotta think about it as another chance. Fresh horizons, new worlds to conquer.
New worlds are for young people.
New worlds are for young. Did you know that Christopher Columbus was 46 years old when he sailed the North Atlantic? No, it's true, No, and that, thank you, dear, that Verrazano was 45 years old when he charted the unknown coast of North America?
They probably did it because they were too old for any jobs back in the old country.
Oh, yeah, well, you're probably right. I'm glad to see you have much sense of humor. Now, you hang in there, Fred. You're good at what you do. You really are. Something will turn out.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Let's keep in touch. Maybe we can help each other. Deal?
Now, after leaving the Crawford Company, how long was it before you applied for another position?
Oh, right away, immediately.
Were you hired?
No, I wasn't.
How many other applications did you make?
6, 7.
You sent letters of recommendation from your former company each time?
Oh, yes, of course.
Were you accepted for employment at any of these companies that you applied to?
No, I wasn't. No, I didn't get as far as an interview. Every time I wrote to the company, I got a form letter back from them thanking me for my application and stating that the position had already been filled.
And you suspected nothing?
No, nothing. Oh, sure, I'd heard about companies that investigated prospective employees. But I had nothing to worry about. I was in the clear. As a matter of fact, I even looked on it for a while as kind of a vacation. Maggie? Maggie!
I'm in the bedroom.
Well, you were expecting me.
I told them we'd be there by 7.
Come here.
No, Kevin, I just had my hair done.
It looks
Look out.
gorgeous.
No,
Let's
no,
mess it up.
No. What's gotten into you lately?
The devil.
No, I know. I guess it's just being alone together for the first time in 17 years. I mean, getting to know each other, you know, without Jerry coming out of the bedroom and saying, "What are you doing there, Dad?" And I said, "Oh, just wrestling with your ma, son. Now you go on out and play." And then living like the rich folk do, not having to get up and go to work every... Any phone calls? Transcoastal kept me on the payroll for 6 months as a form of severance pay. But at the end of 6 months, the check stopped coming, and I still hadn't found a job. Oh, I had little money saved, but, well, there were payments on the house and the cars. I had a son in college. I had to have a job, any kind of a job.
In other words, you just stopped trying to get a job in the field that you were an expert for 12 years in, hmm?
Yes, sir, that's right.
You made no effort to try to find out why you were being denied employment?
I did make an effort. I wrote a dozen letters. I got a dozen polite replies. I made phone calls. I was always told there were no openings. They didn't need anybody.
Didn't you at some point begin to think there was something wrong?
Well, of course. I couldn't figure out what it was. I began to think it might be because I was over 45, or maybe someone in my old company didn't like me, and maybe some way or another that recommendation was checked on and not borne out. I found that wasn't the case. No, I never let up, but I couldn't get at the answer. I just simply couldn't find out what it was.
So, you drove a truck for 9 months?
Yes, sir, even after we moved into the apartment, it was hard to make ends meet. There were still a lot of unpaid bills from the old days.
What effect was all this having on your private life?
Well, exactly the kind of effect you'd expect.
Son, may I speak to you for a moment?
Yes, Doctor.
I'm sorry about last night,
It's all right.
but it isn't. I can tell by the way you're looking at me.
Do you think you know me that well by now?
You know I do. And I'd like to get to know you better.
I'll bet you do. As long as it's a one-way street.
How can you watch that junk?
What do you mean by that?
You know perfectly well what I mean. Or have you decided to leave?
Where's your supper?
Oh, I had something to eat about 2:30. I'm not hungry.
Talk to me.
Oh, what did you do today?
Well, turn it back on.
If you don't like it, I don't have to have it on.
Turn it on, turn it on.
Maybe I should get a job.
You gonna start that again?
Well, I just thought
What would you do? What are you trained for? I mean, stewardess, maybe model, private secretary. Can't type, can't take dictation. What would you do?
maybe I could sell something in a department store.
You don't have to do that.
I'm making enough money for us to get by on. This rotten luck won't last forever. You don't have to do that.
All right, I know I don't have to do it, but, well, maybe I want to. I can't just sit in this place day after day waiting for you to come home. And we're not getting by, and I can't live like this. I have got to get out of here.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's it. You gotta get out of here. That's really what you're talking about, isn't it? That's really what you're talking about now, isn't it?
Stop it now! Stop it!
Please. You're killing me. This isn't an apartment anymore. It's an arena where all we do is fight. And it's killing me. I have got to get out of here. I've got to get out. I can't breathe.
Maggie.
Oh, don't touch me. It'll hurt.
Please.
Please.
She packed her bag and left within the hour.
And when was the next time you saw her?
6 months later, when we met in her lawyer's office to sign the divorce papers.
How long had you been unemployed in your usual line of work before you finally got a hold of some hint as to what was keeping you unemployed?
About 2 years.
This was 3 months ago, was it?
Yes.
Please tell the court and the jury what happened 3 months ago.
I received a phone call. Hello?
Kevin? Fred Carter.
Oh, hi, Fred. How are you?
Fine. In fact, I'm very well. I'm over at United now.
United. Gee, that's wonderful.
Thanks. Listen, Kevin, I hear that you're still looking.
Yeah, you could say that.
Well, there might be something for you here. Something good. You'd be perfect for it.
Really? Jeez, I can't thank you.
I know. Skip the thanks for now. We made a deal, remember?
So I applied for the job.
And what happened?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just like all the other times. I couldn't find out why. I couldn't even get Fred on the phone. So I went looking for him.
I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. I tried to stop him.
Well, that's okay. Come on in, Kevin. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes of my time. 2 minutes. But I want you to go and not come back, you understand?
What the hell's going on, Fred? Why are you talking to me like this? Because I broke into your office? I mean, why did I have to break in?
Don't you know if I could have gotten you that job, I would have? Why do you have to embarrass me like this?
Embarrassing? We were friends, for heaven's sake. Friends! I've been out of work for 2 years, and you know why.
If I could have given you the answer, I would have picked up the phone and called you. You're asking me something I can't answer.
My life is ready to go down the tube. I've lost my wife, my house. I've lost everything I ever had. There's a big blank wall out there that I've been hitting my head against for 2 years, and you can stand there and tell me that I'm embarrassing you? That you can't tell me? Have you forgotten that I got you that job that you lived and worked in for 10 years? You owe me something!
Now, calm down. Just wait a minute. Sit down, Kevin. Now, look. When I heard you didn't get the job, I tried to find out why. All they'd tell me was that Corporate Research Associates turned in a negative report on you.
What the hell is Corporate Research Associates?
Every company like this one orders a checkout on potential employees. There's just a few companies in this area that do these checkouts. The one that compiled the dossier on you is Corporate Research Associates. Kevin. The report was very negative.
Negative? How?
Wouldn't tell me in personnel except that it was negative.
But that's impossible. I mean, they couldn't write a negative report after an investigation of me.
But they did. In fact, I lost some points in this company because I recommended you. It's one of those things you can feel, and I felt it. I'm just getting back to where I was. So whatever they've got on you, it's bad.
And what did you do when you left Fred Carter's office?
I went to the Corporate Research Associates. I got nowhere. They refused to let me in to see anybody. or to discuss any investigation of me, or to let me look at my file. They even denied the existence of any file on me.
And then what did you do?
Well, then I came to see you. Now, something has kept me out of work for 2 years. What is it? Whatever they've got in those files has got to be false.
Sit down and relax for a moment. Are you sure there can't be anything negative in your file?
Yes.
Have you ever had any difficulties with your credit?
Never, never. I've had all the credit cards. Well, I've had them.
Did you ever get into difficulties with a credit that wasn't your fault?
No, never.
No, like being billed for something that you didn't receive.
Never.
Were you ever in the service?
Yeah, 2 years in the Army, 9 months in Korea, honorable discharge.
Anything else? You ever been arrested? You ever been arrested and acquitted?
I've never been arrested.
You ever been arrested for anything? I mean, been accused of drunk driving, and then they found out you weren't drunk.
Never, even a speeding ticket.
All right, I guess we'll just have to get a hold of those files.
Can you do it?
Yes, I can do it. I'll have a copy of your dossier in 2 days.
Hello? Oh, you did? When can I see it? What about right now? I mean, if you're going to be in for a while, I can come right over. Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Well, good evening, Mr. Ireland. This is my associate, Mr. Neil Darrow.
Mr. Arnold? Well, what is it? What is this, this negative information?
Please, sit down. All right. Legal record clean, educational background excellent, health good, credit A1. But now we get into this material that's causing you all the trouble. Character and reputation. Now, Mr. Ireland, please don't say anything till I've finished. You'll want to, but when I've finished, then I want to hear what you have to say. Now, number one, you and your wife gave wild parties that required police action. Now, just wait a minute. Number two, you used physical violence against a neighbor. He had planned to bring charges against you, but he died under mysterious circumstances, possibly linked to you before he could pursue those charges. And just one more now. Three, you were accused of hit-and-run driving. The case was dismissed as a result of your settlement with the victim. Now, that's it.
This is a nightmare. It's incredible. Are people allowed to do this sort? Is it possible?
Not only possible, it happens thousands of times every day in this country. About 8% of these reports contain this type of information. Now, what's your response to it?
It's insane.
All right, but I want you to tell me why it's insane.
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll take them one by one. First of all, the wild party. Now, my wife and I rarely gave parties, but one night we did for the neighborhood association we belonged to. It was our turn that year. So we all chipped in, and we rented a small orchestra, you know, a combo. The next-door neighbors called up the police and complained about the noise. Now, at one time or another, those very same neighbors had accused every family on the block of throwing wild parties. The policemen were used to them. And they came by the house, told me about the complaint, shrugged their shoulders, laughed a little bit, and left. Now, about number two. Am I using physical violence against a neighbor? That same next-door neighbor, the husband, was cordially disliked. No, he was despised by everyone in the neighborhood. One day I came home, and I found him chopping down a bush, a shrub, on my property. Well, I very politely asked him to leave, And he said, no, I'm not going to leave until I cut down this thing here, because it's blocking the view from my driveway. Well, I very politely and gently took him by the arm, and I escorted him off of my property, and I said, don't ever set foot on this property again. Well, the next day I called my gardener, and I had him cut down the tree. Now, if the investigators had only checked with any of the other neighbors involved, they would have found out the truth. Now, as for his death under mysterious circumstances, there was no mystery about it at all. I mean, he had a heart attack a few months later and died. He was over 70 years old.
How about the hit and run? Was that a lie also?
No, that was the truth. If you can call distortion out of all proportion truth. One day I got a letter from the court citing me for a hit-and-run offense. Well, it scared me to death. I rushed immediately down to the courthouse, and I found out that someone had reported that I had backed my car into someone else's in a parking lot and then driven off without leaving my name and address. And that's hit and run. Something that could happen to anyone. They might not even know they did it, but it's called hit and run. Well, it simply wasn't true. It was patently untrue. The parking lot was at the Keith and Edwards department store over in Millfield. I have never been on that park. I've never even been in the store in Millfield. I mean, there is a Keith and Edwards store a few miles from where I live in our neighborhood. I frequently go there. Now, someone obviously took down the wrong license number.
If it wasn't true, why did you settle?
Well, on the advice of my attorney. Something having to do with insurance rates. See, it was only a $67 claim. I sent a check to the owner of the damaged car, and along with a letter that said I wasn't admitting any guilt. I still had to appear in court, of course, but the other person never showed up, and so the case was dismissed because I'd paid for the damages. So that's it. Now you know. Anything you can do?
Now, just what is it you want, Mr. Darrow?
Mr. Gale, unless you agree to take immediate action to rectify these errors, we are going to sue you for at least $3 million.
You mean, of course, if your client is willing to wait 2 or 3 years to get the case on the court docket. And I can see you haven't handled many cases of this kind before. I'm not a lawyer, but I know more than a little about this area of the law. I know, for instance, that you can't sue successfully in a case like this unless you can prove malicious intent.
But Mr. Ireland isn't asking us to sue you. All he's asking is that you correct the errors so he can get to work.
How can we correct things that are already accurate? You know, after you called, I contacted the man who originally investigated Mr. Ireland. His sources of information were court records and reliable citizens of good reputation.
Reliable? Good reputation? If your man had bothered to check, he would have found out the neighbor was unreliable and had a lousy reputation. And you made a technical hit-and-run charge sound like he'd hit somebody on a highway and driven off. You don't double-check anything, do you?
We can't. Where would it end? Do you want us to double-check and then triple-check and then so on and so on? We don't have the budget for that. It would be economically unfeasible.
Economically unfeasible? So that's the answer. Destroy a man's life, but don't bother to double-check the facts because it's economically unfeasible.
If we started to double-check everything, there is no company in the country that could afford us. Now, don't try to tell me how to run my business, Mr. Darrow.
Don't worry, I won't. But law is my business, and lawyers often take people like you to court.
Be my guest. We have an excellent legal staff here.
All right, let's not talk law for now. Let's talk about humanity. Let's talk about a man, a good man, who's had his life practically destroyed because of the distortion of truth and innuendo.
Distortions and innuendos according to what he told you. Now, how do I know that that's true?
Double check it and you'll find out. Mr. Gale, what do I have to do to get through to you? Doesn't anything I've said about Mr. Ireland and what he's gone through disturb you?
Mr. Darrow, lots of things disturb me. Organized crime, the war, air pollution. but I learned to live with them because I have to. We provide a valuable service, and so we live with the imperfections. We do the best we can under the circumstances.
If that's the best people in your position can do, then we are, all of us, in a great deal of trouble. Good day, Mr. Gale.
Now, Mr. Ireland, could you tell the court what happened next?
Mr. Darrell telephoned me later that day, told me about his conversation with Mr. Gale. I started walking, for hours, I guess, walking the streets, thinking. The next thing I knew, I was in an elevator in that building. I broke into the office. I started to break things.
In other words, you remember everything you did?
No, I just remember pieces. I remember almost getting hit by a car while I was walking. I don't remember consciously thinking of going into that building. I don't remember how I got there, whether I walked there, took a cab, or what. I do remember being in the elevator, breaking up the things in the office. I remember the security guards coming in.
Do you remember planning to destroy anything in the office or steal anything?
No, sir.
Do you remember looking for anything in the office?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ireland. Your witness.
Well, in view of the fact that the defendant in testimony has completely confirmed the state's case, I have no questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've pled many cases, more than I like to think of. I've pled many a case right here in this courtroom. I suppose I should be immune to emotion by now. Perhaps most of the time I am, but not today. For today I'm pleading a very special case. As Kevin Ireland told you his story, I couldn't help but think what I would have done had these terrible things happened to me. And I wonder what each of you has been thinking. Could it happen to you? Might it happen to you, say, next week when you return to your normal pursuits? I think you'll agree that Kevin Ireland is all the things that we are or try to be. He went to school, got a job, got married, became a father. Not a great man, but a good man. Then he lost his job through no fault of his own. And what did he do? What you and I would do, he looked for another one. And then he came across something new in our society, a procedure in our employment practices. You see, most large companies go to investigative organizations for information on the private lives of job applicants. But a curious thing happened to Kevin. The information about him was never checked out. Now, Mr. Gale, whom you heard earlier, admitted this. His company couldn't afford to double-check the report on Kevin Ireland or anyone else. Industry won't pay for thoroughly substantiated information. Now, you heard Mr. Ireland refute each item of negative information. Now, was this challenged by the prosecution? No. The prosecutor, who is an extremely able man, he didn't contest one thing Kevin Ireland said. Why? Because Kevin Ireland told the truth. This man's life was destroyed by a dossier. By a dossier, and for a moment he lost control and committed a crime. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the question I present to you is whether or not you want to find him culpable for what he did. Now, soon you will retire to consider your verdict. A verdict which is yours and yours alone to make. You will be instructed by the judge as to the law, but he cannot instruct you as to your verdict. You are not required to apply the law as if no human consideration were before you. You are required to seek justice. And please keep this in mind when you deliberate. What happened to Kevin Ireland could
happen to any of you. Well, that was fast.
Yeah. Was it good or bad?
Depends.
On what?
The verdict.
Remain seated. Court is now in session.
Will the jury foreman please hand the verdict to the bailiff?
In the case of the People versus Kevin Ireland, we find the defendant not guilty.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The jury is dismissed with thanks. The defendant is released. The court is adjourned.
There's nothing I say that could... Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I'd better get going. I've got some resumes to write.
Go on.
Well, Jeff, another case of jury nullification. They decided against the written law. How do you feel about that?
Walt, you don't really fight for justice all the time. You fight for your client. You have to. You're a defense attorney. But I don't have that problem. Anytime justice is done, I win. And I think justice was done here. Congratulations, Counselor.
Jeff.
Operator, I think my phone's out of order. Would you dial my number for me, please? 555-8037. Thank you. Hello? Yes, it is. Yes, it rang. Thank you.
Hello, Kevin. This is Walt Nichols.
Oh, hello, Mr. Nichols.
Hey, we haven't heard from you, Kevin. So I thought I'd call and see how things were going.
Fine, just fine. Oh, except that I haven't paid your fee yet.
Well, I'm not worried about the fee. How's the job situation?
Oh, well, it's still a little early to get any answers, of course.
It's been quite a while, though, huh? Don't you think you should have heard something by now?
Well, those big companies, they don't move fast, you know.
I see.
Well, don't worry. You'll get your money as soon as I go to work. And that's going to be any day now. Things are looking good. Real good. Really.
Well, that's fine. That's fine, Kevin. Now, stop worrying about the fee. Just keep in touch. Goodbye.
Bye.
I'm going to go and see a man, and I think you better come along with me because I may clobber him. We want to see Mr. Gale.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gale's busy right now.
Mr. Gale, I would suggest that you see us right now.
Miss Jackson, show them in.
We want the current dossier and Kevin Ireland. And I have to tell you, he is not someone I would want angry at me. You know, he might just be angry enough to take a whole year off just to see how vulnerable you are in a court of law. If you have any judgment at all, give us that file.
That sounds like a threat.
Not at all. It's just, how do you people say, unadorned information?
Call it a threat if you like. There are just the three of us here. Get the file.
Employment record for the past 2 years has drifted from one job to another. Credit, poor, car repossessed, bad debts with 2 banks. Legal record, arrested and tried for breaking and entering and destroying almost $50,000 worth of private... Everything in this folder is a direct result of your company's irresponsible actions.
Mr. Darrell, as I explained in court, we do not interpret. These are facts, only facts. Facts which I have an obligation to report to my clients. Now, if you can show me one piece of information in this file that is not the absolute truth, I would be delighted to hear about it.
You told our colleague that you couldn't be sued for libel by us because we couldn't prove malice. You were right. Now it's a vendetta. And a vendetta, Mr. Gale, means malice. We are going to sue you, and that's not a threat. It is a fact.
Well, you just go right ahead and do that. As I told your other colleague, we have an excellent legal staff here. You don't frighten me.
Now? Well, I'll try to rectify that in court. Good day.
Oh, by the way, your client won't be able to claim this time that he wasn't able to see his dossier. I mailed him a copy.
Well, I've been thinking seriously of taking the job with Golden State Imports. It would mean moving, of course, since they're in Florida. I never cared much for the weather down there. No, I think I prefer to work for the Riker Company. Now, Riker's got a lot of imagination. He pays good money. The only thing is, he and his top men are still young. There's not much room for advancement in that company. No, I think I'll turn that down and take the offer from Great Western. Now, they're located in Chicago.
Kevin? Kevin?
Well, the only problem with Great Western is that they've got the lowest pay scale in the industry. And in the winter, that wind just cuts you to pieces coming right off that lake. Maggie. Maggie never could stand the cold. She's my wife, you know, Maggie. She should be back here in a few minutes. She just took Jerry. Well, she's down to pick him up at school. 10 years old, and she won't even let him cross the street. She's a wonderful woman, Maggie. Wonderful woman. She worries a lot.
Miss White! It's Mrs. Fox. I know you're in there. The bed's down.
All right.
What? Put up the bed and open the door. Miss White, the rent check bounced. That's the second time I warned you before. I want cash money here and now or out you go.
Ma'am? There's something wrong in here. Can you call a doctor?
What?
Call a doctor. She's sick. There's something wrong in here. Please call a doctor. Hey. Oh. Hey! Hey!
Thanks, Bob.
There, Mr. Nichols. Here's Terry Kimball. Ready to holler.
As you know, we've been in touch with the public defender's office. Mr. Virgil over there has filled us in, brought us up to date. I'm prepared to take over, conduct your defense, if you want me to.
Sir, I don't get this at all.
Well, didn't Mr. Virgil tell you that...
No. I mean, how do I rate you guys? I haven't got a dime.
Well, you knew of Father Soriano in Vietnam?
Yes, sir. My chaplain.
Mr. Virgil got depositions from a couple of officers who knew you in combat. That's how Father Soriano found out you were in trouble. He's an old friend of mine, so he wrote to me and asked me to see if there was anything I could do.
Do? I'm sorry, sir, but I've been sitting here for 4 months. And you begin to think that nobody's gonna do anything.
Mr. Virgil certainly hasn't been idle in your behalf, young man. The public defender's office is sadly overburdened, so he has no objection to our taking over your case.
You know, of course, that Mr. Virgil was going to plead you temporarily insane.
Well, maybe I am. You sit around here long enough.
Mr. Kimball, I've studied the results of your psychiatric examinations.
Yeah. I've been the whole route.
Those reports establish you as a well-balanced young man.
They asked me, you know, about Vietnam. A lot about that. About killing people over there.
Did you? I mean, kill people?
Yes, sir. I mean, I was a rifleman. I was in the jungle. That's what they sent me there for, wasn't it? Kill people?
Did you ever kill anybody over here? That girl, for example?
I don't know. I mean, I was in there, wasn't I? With her, just me. I mean, what do you want me to say?
Just the truth, as you know it. Now, look, in my opinion, temporary insanity in your case is a losing game. We've got nothing to support it.
Sir, I was... I've never been in trouble like this before. Oh, I don't know how to handle this. I was drunk, I know that.
Do you do that often? Get drunk?
No, sir. See, I was celebrating. I just got out of the Corps. I don't have a family. Just my grandma and my grandpa, and... Well, I was looking for company.
And you never saw the girl before that Thursday night?
No, sir. I just stopped into this bar, and she was there. I just started talking to her, and she was fun to talk to, so I just bought her a couple of drinks. After a while, I was kissing her, and she said, "Not here." She had a waitress call us a cab. I stopped, got a pint. We ended up at her apartment, and we finished off the pint. Well, me mostly. I remember pulling down that old convertible bed. I remember flopping down on it. I remember everything up to then. But that's all. I remember pulling down the old bed and flopping down on it. I don't even know if she... I just passed out, that's all.
What about the bruises on the girl's neck?
I know. I saw them there when I woke up. I don't know how they got there. I don't remember ever touching anybody rough in my whole life. Except maybe in training or messing around with a guy, something like that.
I'm not sure we won't go under, Terry. But we'd like to handle your case. We'll do the best we can.
Well, if Father Soriano says it's right, I guess it's right.
Terry, maybe somehow in the middle of the night in an alcoholic sleep, you seized that girl by the back of the neck and bruised her while you held her face against your other hand or maybe the pillow until she strangled to death. That would explain the pathologic evidence. Do you believe that's what happened?
What else could have happened?
Well, there doesn't appear to be anything else, but I'm asking you. Do you believe it?
Oh, what can I tell you? My gut keeps saying, no, I didn't. I couldn't. But my head keeps saying, yeah? Well, who else could have?
I thought I knew you, Brian. What is it, 12 years now? I've never said it before, but believe me, you are wasting your time. And mine. This is one of those rare, simple, open and shut affairs. If we had eyewitnesses to the act of murder, we wouldn't need them. Now, I'm not sore at anybody. There's just nothing here for you to do.
Sure there is. Keep a promise to an old friend.
You tell Father Soriano. You can't save the kid. I mean, the thing is hopeless.
In his business, Paul, I don't think they go for hopeless.
Now, you've seen the apartment. We even had engineers in there to see if there was any possible way for anyone else to get in or out. And there's not. We went over the whole building with a fine-tooth comb. There's not a mark on the roof. The transom is rusted shut. And there's no fire escape or any other way up from the ground. Anyhow, the window and the frame are warped. And one of my men tried to force it with a pinch bar. Got it open about 4 inches. We've had your client psychoanalyzed and hypnotized. Thank you. Had him under the lie detector twice. He is a dead duck. He was alone in there with that girl, and he knows it. Hasn't tried to lie. Well, it's all in the file. Check with the DA for your request. He says we've nothing to hide.
Have you identified her yet? We hear no one's claimed her.
No. No, she's still at the morgue, which bugs me a little, but...
Any idea where she came from?
No. Called herself Joanne White. Sounds like Jane Doe to me. Anyhow, that's missing persons business. Has no bearing on Terry Kimball.
Who's Albert Crocker?
Taxi driver. Drove him to her place.
Helen Benson?
Well, she's the waitress at the cocktail bar.
I was going to go to her funeral, you know. I'm just about the only friend she had.
Did she ever say where she came from?
Iowa or Ohio? I never remember which is the furthest. Idaho. That's west, I know. Anyhow, I think it was one of those. Hermo probably knows. Ask him.
Where were you that night, Mr. Hill?
I don't know.
Somebody killed the girl I loved. I don't think I'd ever forget the night.
Well, you and me is different. Now, if it was you, you'd bust in there and killed her. It's like you read all the time in the newspaper. I never did see much sense in that. I mean, why kill her? If it's me, and I'd have been in there, I'd have killed him. No, sir. Some buck gyrene honking around with Joni. I don't feel one bit busted up about him being locked in jail for it. No, sir. Not one bit.
How long you been working here, Mr. Hill?
What's the difference?
Well, you don't hold a job too long. It was difficult to find you. Maybe you want it that way.
Truth is, I don't cotton much to work.
Why can't you stop it and face me, Mr. Hill?
Because I'm so busy.
Or so nervous? Or so guilty?
Guilty of what?
I don't know. But eventually you're going to tell me.
I ain't going to tell you nothing I don't want to tell you.
Maybe that's it. There's something you do want to tell me. I'm a lawyer, Yermo. I've been through this too often to be wrong. All of a sudden, middle of a conversation, you realize you're talking to a man with a guilty conscience.
I ain't got no conscience, mister.
Call it brag, then. You think you're gonna make the biggest brag of your life. That one big moment, that's what you're waiting for.
Ain't you the one, though? Yes, sir, Mr. Lawyer. You got yourself a problem, ain't you?
You gotta tell this whopper sometime. That's what it's all about. And Yermo, that just may be when the big laugh comes. Your one big moment, you make your big brag, and it fizzles. Nobody cares.
And that's where you're wrong. There's one thing I could tell you, Mr. Lawyer, is the one thing you'd like to know. Because I have got the answer.
Careful, Yermo. I believe you.
Well, you just bet you do, because I've got it, man. If I was to tell it to you, you could get your gyrene off scot-free just like that. Don't you see? They got that rotten little broad jumper just where I want him at. So there ain't no way that I'm going to tell you what that answer is. Now, how do you like that for a brag?
Are you telling me you don't think he lied to you? He said he lied to you. I'm telling you what his story is. What you're stuck with. Now, what do you want me to do, Brian? Shine bright lights in his face? Give him the third degree? We've gone as far as we can go.
I know you've overextended yourself, Lieutenant, and I'm grateful. One more question.
What about his alibi?
Save your leading questions for the courtroom.
Forgive me, Paul. It's a life mode.
We checked that story on the card game. He told the truth. You want some?
Paul, my instinct says he was telling me the truth. What he said wasn't calculated. It was compulsive, cathartic. He meant it. Now, he knows something. And maybe just what he called it, the answer.
Okay. You know what he's gonna say when you call him as a witness.
Yes and no.
Yeah. Well, suppose I was to tell you that I just don't give a dime.
Nobody comes in here to be alone now. Not you, not me.
What you drinking, sister?
I'm not your sister.
Well, I done figured that out from across the room.
How about that? I was afraid you were only window shopping.
I'll be back for whatever it is this little girl is a-drinking. Come on, sister, I reckon you done scored.
Well, just like that, huh?
Are you coming or not? Hey, fella.
You are.
These seats is taken. This here's my table you're sitting at.
Show you to another.
Hey, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Look, are you all right? Look, I'll let you sit down. Bartender, we spilled. Look, I take the. We need a mop over here. Go away. I'll be right back. Here we go. This is for the one that I spilled, and I'd like to buy you another one for an apology.
Oh, that's all right, Dow. Accidents will happen.
No, I'd really like to, you know. Look, I'll just hang in over there until you're finished, okay?
Over there? Over where? Join the party. I'm nobody's sister. So sit down.
I think your friend wants to be alone, miss.
Oh, hellfire, man. Sit down. I got to have someone to talk to.
Well, okay.
I only just stopped in for one, you know, to kind of light the furnace. Got me a bottle of 30-year-old scotch at my apartment. I'm not going to sit here all night and drink.
Oh. Now I've heard everything. I mean, I've had guys try every campy trick in this whole dumb world to get me up to their apartment. But 30-year-old scotch. Oh, wow.
Man wasn't talking to you, woman child. The man is talking to me.
No, you don't understand. I wasn't talking to either one of you. No, wait. No, what I mean is, I was talking to both of you. No, what I mean is, I wasn't trying to get anybody up to my apartment.
How did you come by any Scotch whiskey claims to be 30 years old?
I used to sell stuff. Just borrowed a few samples.
I never heard of no 30-year-old Scotch whiskey.
Yeah, sweetie.
Oh, no, thank you. I think I'd prefer something else, like bed. I feel rotten.
Oh, well, bedroom's right through the door. You don't mind her using my bed, do you? That is good. Better believe it, man. Hey, I didn't get your name.
Yermo Hill, friend.
Hey, mine's... No kidding.
No kidding what?
Well, sure. Can't be two guys with the name Yermo Hill. You must be the guy that knows something about that girl that was killed.
B-Dog. They're talking about that already, huh?
Yeah.
You know, that's funny. I only told it to one man.
Well, you told some cops.
Yeah, how'd you know that?
Well, I know your buddy that runs the luncheonette where you eat all the time. He said he saw you talking to some cops.
Huh.
Yeah. Wow. Man. Too bad he's broke.
Who is?
The guy that got for killing her?
What makes you say too bad?
Well, supply and demand. I mean, if you had some information and he had any money.
What makes you think he's broke?
Well, he's using a public defender.
Well, I don't know where you get your information from, friend, but it's wrong. He's got lawyers. Private lawyers.
Okay, maybe you're in.
In how?
I'm a salesman, right? I can sell dog powder to fleas. Now, if you really had some information, I mean really, I could get you a good price for it.
Who from?
It's lawyers, man.
Yes, sir. That is real righteous Scotch whiskey.
Drink up.
This might be 30 years old at that. But then, I didn't exactly come down with the last rain myself.
That'll get you.
That's right, friend. You done tried, but you don't get me, because I just smelt you out.
Oh, come on, Yerma, don't get so excited.
Well, I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just trying to do you a favor, that's all.
Mister, if I got anything to sell, I can sell it myself. I don't need any stoolie picking me up in some cocktail bar accidentally on purpose.
Oh, listen, Yerma, whatever you think I'm trying to do...
I just think you lost yourself a bottle of scotch is all. That is, unless it come off some expense account.
Yeah, well, all right. Why don't you just sit down, Yerma, and pour yourself another drink?
But just who are
Just
you?
cool it, because the party's not over. Well, now sit down.
You're buying.
Ruth,
Yeah.
you better call Walt and Brian and tell them
I blew it.
You sure you don't want to do it?
Oh, you call them. You're a lady. They won't yell at you.
A little girlie said she was drunk. She never was drunk.
That's right.
There ain't a woman in this world a man can trust.
Yes, Ruth. Yeah. No, Ruth. Leave him alone until we get there. Yeah, we'll be there in about 15 minutes, Ruth. Thanks, Ruth.
That, I trust, was Ruth.
Yeah, Yermo wouldn't take the bait. I guess we'll have to... Hello? Yeah, Brian. Oh, hi, Paul. Yeah, oh, 1 second. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I got that. He's what? Oh, hold on, Paul. Better go to Neil without me.
Hewitt?
They found a doctor who may know something about the girl. A chiropractor. How did Miss White happen to come to you, Dr. Benton? I mean, did she find you in a phone book?
Oh, she was referred to me by a colleague, chiropractor who had been treating her in Duluth, Minnesota. Which is how I know she was in Duluth before she came here. How long she'd been in Duluth, I have no idea.
Well, she came to you on the morning of the day she died, right?
Yes, I saw her at 10 a.m. But the police have all this information.
Yes, I know. Did they also tell you about the bruises on the back of her neck?
Oh, yes.
Doctor, could those bruises have possibly
No,
caused...
no, they could not. Chiropractic is not a contact sport, Mr. Darrow. It's a highly developed science, an art, a gentle one.
Yes, I understand, but isn't it true that some people bruise quite easily?
Well, I'm not a medical doctor. I can't give you an educated answer about that, but I can tell you this. For a patient to respond to my treatment, my hands must respond to the patient. Sensitive, responsive touch. My whole success depends on that. I have never bruised a patient, Mr. Darrow, in 17 years of practice.
Mr. Nichols. Oh, those country boys are hard to outfox.
Yeah, I know. I'm one of them. Brian couldn't come.
Yermo, this is
Walter Nichols. You know what he does?
No, I reckon not.
Well, I'm going to tell you. He takes people like you and he makes little balls out of them. Then he feeds them to the birds. I wanted you to meet him because Walter is unquestionably one of the greatest criminal lawyers, one of the greatest trial attorneys in the world today. And he's going to be asking you some interesting questions.
Ask away.
Oh, no. Not here, not now. In court. We're going to subpoena you at the trial of Terrence Kimball.
That's fine with me.
Then why are you so nervous?
Nervous?
You're beginning to sweat, Yermo.
Man, everybody sweats.
Okay. You're going to be a witness for the defense. Now, the court permits certain liberties with hostile witnesses. And Walter's going to be asking you about the things you told my brother, Brian Darrell.
Well, I done told all about that to the cops. They asked me everything about that.
But that wasn't under oath. And that wasn't Walter Nichols asking. And Yermo, I tell you from the heart, don't try to beat him at his game.
Well, what do you think I should do?
I think you should tell us everything you know now.
You boys have got this thing down real pat. I tell you, you put on a real fine show.
Let's go, Neil. I found out what I want to know.
Oh, and Yermo, this place is paid for a week, so just take your time.
Defense calls Yermo Hill. Is there anything, Mr. Hill, anything at all that you'd care to say to the court at this time?
Well, maybe just that I'm real proud to be here.
Would you like to help us to establish the relationship between yourself and the dead girl, Joanne White? Were you her lover?
Yes, sir. I mean, I thought I was. I was being true to her.
You knew that Mr. Kimball had been arrested and charged with her murder?
Yes, sir, that's what I heard.
Were you gratified? I mean, glad?
Well, sir, I just figured let the law take its course the way I felt.
But didn't you feel that the law had him right where you wanted him?
Well, sir, it wasn't up to me where they had him at.
Were you angry enough, or let's say jealous enough, to just let him languish in jail as a kind of a punishment for his attentions to your girlfriend?
Well, sir, killing her is what they had him in for, what the punishment's for.
You wouldn't wish him to suffer unjustly.
Oh, no, sir, that wouldn't be fair.
Are you employed as an auto mechanic at the Mueller Garage on Center Avenue in the city?
Yes, sir, I am.
You were interviewed at that address on the morning of June 11 by Mr. Brian Darrell?
Oh, well, sir, I'd have to think back. He come to see me, yes, sir. If you say it's June 11, and June 11 she is.
How well do you recall that interview?
Pretty well, sir.
No further questions of this witness at this time?
Your Honor, is defense going to recall this witness?
Respectfully, Counselor, we have no answer to that right now.
Well, he is your witness. I have no cross-examination at this time, Your Honor.
The witness is excused. You're excused.
Defense calls Mr. Brian Darrell to the stand.
I'm not at all broke up about them having him in jail.
Are those his exact words, Mr. Darrell?
Well, that was the content of the statement he made, using his words as well as I can recall them.
Now, prosecution has established that the defendant, Terrence Kimball, was still in Joanne White's apartment, alone with her dead body when the police arrived. And that the bed was still down and the window jammed. Did Mr. Hill indicate to you in the June 11th interview that there was no way into or out of that apartment when the bed was down?
He did.
Did he make any statement to you personally or directly referring to the apparent predicament in which that put the defendant?
He did.
If you remember that statement, will you tell the court what it was?
Mr. Hill said, I have the answer. If I were to give it to you, you could get your gyrene off scot-free.
Did you ask him what the answer was?
I did.
And did he give it to you?
No, he did not. He refused.
Did he tell you why he refused?
Well, as accurately as I can remember his words, the reason he gave was, they've got that rotten little broad jumper right where I want him at.
Mr. Wahlberg?
Mr. Darrow, did anyone at the garage, to your knowledge, overhear the conversation with Mr. Hill?
No, there were other mechanics in the garage, but I later learned they didn't hear what we were saying.
Oh, in other words, there were no witnesses to corroborate your account of this interview on June 11th?
No witnesses.
Thank you. No more questions, Your Honor.
Does the witness understand the question?
About them cops?
Yes. What did you say to them about the answer that you mentioned to Mr. Darrow?
I told them cops the same thing that I told Mr. Darrow, that I was spoofing, that there weren't no answer.
But now, Mr. Hill, you are under oath, and you must tell the truth. Perjury is a crime. People found guilty of perjury are punished by law. They're sent to prison. Do you understand that?
I ain't told one single lie, not one.
You did tell Mr. Darrow that you had the answer, right?
Yes, sir. And I also told him I was spoofing, too.
Mr. Hill, let me point out that what you may say at some lunch counter or some corner bar or some garage, you may not say in a court of law unless it's the truth. Now, if you were indeed spoofing, you may say so. But you may not spoof here. If, on the other hand, you have knowledge which may bear on this case, you must reveal it. To deny it would be perjury, and to conceal it would be to commit another crime, that of willfully and deliberately withholding evidence. That could cost the life of a boy. That boy. That boy who made a mistake, but may have committed no crime. No crime at all. Mr. Hill, you told Mr. Darrow the truth on June the 11th, did you not? There is what you referred to as an answer. You said a moment ago that you had not yet lied here. And I think the court believes you. You see, you're going to be okay. Nothing's going to happen to you if you tell the truth. All you have to do is to say yes or no. Is there an answer, Mr. Hill?
Yeah, there is.
What is that answer?
Oh, it happened once before.
What happened?
She had a fit.
What?
She had an epilepsy fit. Joni had epilepsy.
Order. How did you know that Joanne White was an epileptic, Mr. Hill?
She told me. Oh, we was up there one time, and she had this attack, and I had to keep her from choking. She told me after.
Your Honor, as surprising as this testimony is, it does provide all the answers material to this issue. Now, in view of this, we request the charge against Mr. Kimball be withdrawn.
No, sir.
Mr. Wahlberg?
The people do not intend to withdraw. When Mr. Nichols is finished, I'll cross-examine Mr. Hill.
Counselor?
Your witness then, Mr. Wahlberg.
Permission to approach the witness, Your Honor.
Permission is granted.
Now, Mr. Hill, have you ever been convicted of a felony?
No, sir.
No?
Well, suspended sentence is what I got.
On what charge?
It had to do with used cars, selling used cars.
Well, we took the trouble to look it up, so if you've forgotten, we know the answer. I ask you again, what charge?
False and misleading. They claimed that we was giving out these false guarantees.
And suspended your sentence. But you were, in fact, convicted of being an accomplished liar.
Objection. Improper. Counsel knows it.
Sustained. Strike that from the record. And I caution you, Mr. Wahlberg.
My apologies to the court, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Hill, Let's go on to the alleged epileptic seizure. Was there any other witness to it?
No, sir. Johnny and me is all.
I assume that you mentioned it to certain people since.
Well, why'd I do that? It wasn't no one else's business.
And yet today, almost 5 months later, you step into this courtroom and ask this court to accept this as fact?
I just told what happened is all.
Well, when, Mr. Hill, did you change your mind?
About what?
Well, think back, Mr. Hill. Now, today you provide this court with this elusive so-called answer. Yet on June 12th, you told 2 officers of the law that there was no answer. Now, what made you change your mind?
Objection and assumption.
Sustained.
You met Mr. Brian Darrow before. We all know that. Have you ever met Mr. Nichols before you came into this courtroom?
Objection.
Objection's overruled.
Did you?
Do I answer?
You do.
Well, then, yes, I met him before one time.
Now, if I say to you subordination, Mr. Hill, do you know what I mean?
Your Honor.
Exactly.
Your Honor.
A bribe, a threat, you know.
If the court please. This is not only improper cross-examination, it is downright insulting to me and to my colleagues.
Sustained. Strike everything after I've met him one time. Now, Mr. Wahlberg, you are disingenuous, and you are flirting with contempt. If there were any evidence of subordination, you know perfectly well how it would have to be introduced.
My apologies to the court, Your Honor.
Accepted, but the next time, apologies will not suffice.
Now, Mr. Nichols told you part of what perjury means, Mr. Hill. Now, it is also perjury if you rashly swear to a matter that you have no probable cause to believe in. And you are swearing now. You're under oath.
Whatever I'm swearing to, it's true.
Good. Now, to your knowledge, was Joanne White under the care of a physician? Did she take prescribed medicine regularly?
No, sir. She takes aspirin.
When did you last see her alive?
I was with her the night before she died.
Did she have any bruises then on the back of her neck?
No, sir.
You sure?
I'm sure.
There's no further questions, Your Honor.
Defense, are you not going to object to those last 2 questions?
No, Your Honor. We're inclined to agree that there were no bruises there the night before. In fact, in view of the defeasant nature of Mr. Hill's testimony, we request a brief recess to permit us time to bring in a witness who we were not prepared to call.
I never saw Miss White before that day. She told me she suffered from headaches. They were very severe, extreme. That's what I treated her for.
By manipulating the cervical vertebrae.
That is essentially correct.
But first, you massage certain muscles to relax them.
Yes, the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius.
Doctor, would you please place the fingers of my right hand on the trapezius muscle over the cervical vertebrae in the back of my neck?
Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. I now show the jury that the doctor has placed the fingers of my hand precisely in the position of the bruises in the back of the dead girl's neck.
Mr. Darrow, I told you before I did not cause those bruises.
You also told me before, if I recall correctly, that you are not an expert on bruises.
It's not my field. I'm not a medical doctor.
Would you be willing to concede, then, that it is within the realm of possibility, however remote, that the bruises on the back of that girl's neck were caused by you?
Yeah. As a remote hypothesis, of course, but only remote.
Thank you, Doctor. No further questions.
The court is going to preempt and call Dr. Sinclair. He's the coroner who performed the autopsy on Miss White.
Dr. Sinclair, were you looking for symptoms of epilepsy?
No, sir.
Are those symptoms easy or difficult to find in an autopsy?
Well, they'd be difficult.
Isn't it true that Joanne White's death could have occurred as a direct result of a classic epileptic symptom, the trachea blocked off by the swallowed tongue?
Yes, that's true.
Thank you. So we have, Your Honor.
You're a witness, Mr. Wahlberg.
Doctor, now, what if someone gripped Miss White by the neck, bruising her as she fought, and if he put his other hand against her nose and mouth, would not that be cause for her to die by strangulation in exactly the way you described?
It certainly could have, yes.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor?
Thank you, Doctor. You're excused. Defense, have you anything further to present? Mr. Nichols?
Walt, shall we rest?
Defense calls Terrence Kimball to the stand.
Terrence Kimball, please take the witness stand.
Just the truth, lad. The simple truth. Sorry, Brian.
Raise your right hand.
The jury to see Terry is surprised.
So was mine. Listen, next time, will you please pass me a note or something?
And nothing but the truth. This you do under the pains and penalty of perjury.
I do.
State your full name.
Terrence Kimball.
Be seated.
Terry, in a little while, this jury is going to retire to determine whether or not you've been proven guilty of murder. Your conduct as a Marine has been cited, but only a few short hours of one night out of all your life have any bearing on the question we're trying here. I'm going to ask you that question now so that you may make public your answer. I'm going to ask it because, apart from what this jury decides as to your guilt or innocence, it is you, Terry Kimball, who must live from now on with the question and with the answer. Terry, did you kill Joanne White?
All I can say is, sir, I don't know. I just wish to God I hadn't drunk so much. If it really was an epileptic seizure and I hadn't passed out, maybe I could have helped her.
Defense rest.
Do the people intend to cross-examine? Mr. Wahlberg?
I have no questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Court is now in session. Be seated.
The foreman will hand the verdict to the bailiff.
To the charge of murder in the second degree, not guilty. To the charge of assault with intent to do gross bodily harm, not guilty.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, for your excellent service. You are now dismissed. And the defendant is discharged. Court is adjourned.
just another day.
What happened?
Well, when we heard where they were sending him, he passed out. Gave his head a nasty crack on the floor.
That poor innocent boy wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the commies.
Yeah, you mean he wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the police, don't you, honey?
What's the difference? It's all the same. We live in a police state. Do I know you?
No, me. We've been married 40 years.
Very funny. My husband was murdered by radicals, and he's been dead 40 years.
How long have you been dead?
And then when we got out of our unit, I saw 2 men and 2 women standing in front of a bar. And we walked over to interrogate them.
Wait a minute, hold it. Didn't you say you were answering a juvenile disturbance call?
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct, but...
Well, does that defendant look like a juvenile to you, Officer Taylor?
No, but these people look suspicious.
I'll object to that, Your Honor.
If you hadn't, I would have. Unless you can tell me what is suspicious about 4 adults standing on a public sidewalk in front of a bar during business hours.
Please continue, Officer Taylor.
While we were approaching, I saw the defendant, Charles Mobley, reach into his pocket, take out a small envelope, and drop it in the street.
What'd you do then?
Well, we patted the suspects down.
Objection. Now, what were they suspected of? Acting suspicious?
Sustained. Counsel would prefer you don't call them suspects. And so would I.
Yes, Your Honor. We patted all 4 of the people down and interrogated them, then we let them go. The defendant and his friends went into the bar, and as soon as they were inside, I picked up the envelope and examined its contents.
What was in the envelope?
3 joints, marijuana cigarettes.
And then what did you do?
I went into the bar and arrested the suspect.
Thank you, Officer Taylor.
And that's all there is to it, Mr. Carlson?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any cross, Mr. Darrell?
Oh, yes, Your Honor. Quite a bit. Officer Taylor, you were answering a call for assistance in connection with a juvenile disturbance. You stopped to interrogate 4 adults in front of a bar. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
Is it standard procedure to stop in the middle of a call, question and search innocent bystanders?
If they were behaving suspiciously, yes.
What specifically were they doing that made you think they were acting suspiciously? Were they lurking in the shadows? Did they run when they spotted your squad car?
No, but...
Objection. Mr. Darrell is trying to cloud the issue with obscure charges of police harassment.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I hadn't meant it to be that obscure.
The deputy district attorney does have a point, Mr. Darrell.
Yes, Your Honor. I suppose he does. This envelope you say you saw the defendant drop, you picked it up immediately, of course.
No, not immediately.
Why not?
I wanted to conduct the interrogation first.
For what possible reason?
It's better procedure.
Is it better procedure to allow a suspect to go into a crowded bar, making an arrest more difficult, rather than to do it quietly on the street?
Yes, I knew Mr. Elmore from school, even before he started going with my mother. I was in his history class for 2 semesters. So, it wasn't that unusual, him offering to drive me home after school. He'd driven me home before, but this time it was different.
How was it different?
He kind of looked at me a lot. Like he had something on his mind. And I could smell liquor. He didn't look drunk or I wouldn't have gotten in the car with him. But he had been drinking. But I still didn't think anything was wrong. Till I noticed we weren't going the right way. We were on Boylston Terrace. He drove the car off the road, and then he pulled me out. And then he started grabbing at my dress and pulling it off and kissing me real hard. And he was sweaty, and I could tell how much he'd been drinking.
Excuse me, Your Honor, may we approach the bench? This is off the record, Counselor. Your Honor, I question the advisability of putting this witness through such an obvious ordeal.
I don't like it any more than you do, Walt, but I'd say the testimony of the victim, who also happens to be the people's chief witness, isn't just advisable, it's essential.
She shouldn't have to go through this in open court. The girl's only 16 years old, and it doesn't take a psychiatrist to see it's having an effect on her.
Come on, Walt, what you're concerned about is the effect it's having on the jury.
I don't see how either of us can ignore that. Now, can we?
Look, I admit this is an ordeal for the girl, but it's nothing compared to what she went through on that lonely road.
Allegedly went through.
Your Honor, I assure you this is as distasteful to me as it is to the defense. And I appreciate counsel's concern for my witness. But I can't imagine how the jury can determine the facts if we deny a voice to one of the two people who were there.
I'm afraid I have to agree. You may proceed, Mr. Harris.
Please continue, Laurel.
It all got confusing after that. Like too many things happening at once. I remember getting dizzy. Very dizzy, and feeling like I might faint. In fact, I was praying I would. And he was still kissing me and tearing at my clothes. And then he was. And that's when it happened.
When what happened?
When he raped me.
It's hard to say exactly how long you would have lived.
No need for you to be exact, Doctor. I'm sure the jury will know that your guess will be an educated one.
I'd say he would have lived about 2 months at the most, 8.
2 to 8 months. As a general practice, would you give up all hope for a patient in his condition who could have survived for that length of time?
Certainly not. A great deal of research is being done. Breakthrough could happen at any time.
Then you're saying, as a distinguished internist and the victim's personal physician, that if his life had not been criminally snuffed out, without dignity, without benefit of clergy, without due process, there might have been a chance. 1 chance in a million, but still a chance he might have been saved. Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Cooper is not only asking for a conclusion that goes beyond this witness's expertise, he's making a summation speech before the defense has even been heard.
Sustained.
No more questions. Your witness, Mr. Darrow.
Dr. Gold, you testified that the defendant's father would have lived from 2 to 8 months, isn't that correct?
Yes, approximately.
Approximately. Have there been any major breakthroughs in the ongoing research you mentioned since his death?
No, but...
That was 5 months ago. And isn't it a fact that there's usually a considerable period of time between the announcement of a new treatment and its general availability?
Well, yes.
Then even if a new treatment had been announced during the time that Mr. Fryman had left, it's unlikely that it would have been distributed soon enough to save him. Isn't that true?
Unlikely isn't a very precise word.
Well, since there's been no breakthrough yet, and 5 months have elapsed, can you say precisely that any new treatment, if announced 5 minutes from now, would have been available to your patient in time to save him?
Well, it does usually take at least several months before new procedures are accepted in practice.
How many is several, Doctor?
Objection.
I'll withdraw the question. And And I'll apologize in advance for asking the next one, Doctor, but it's a point that must be covered. Is there any possibility of a misdiagnosis in Mr. Fryman's case?
The answer is no. Mr. Fryman was in the last stages of a terminal illness. This wasn't only my diagnosis, but also that of 3 consulting specialists.
Thank you. And the patient was in constant, excruciating pain, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
In spite of heavy sedation?
Yes, he had reached a point where the sedation was only partially effective.
In fact, his suffering was so intense, it would really be impossible to describe it adequately. Isn't that true?
Yes. There's no way to really know what it's like unless you've been through it.
Do you approve of euthanasia, Doctor?
No, I do not.
Not even when practiced by physicians?
I don't approve of euthanasia, period.
In your opinion, do physicians actually practice euthanasia in instances of incurable adult sufferers?
Not to my knowledge.
You're aware that that question was asked of 250 internists and surgeons in a recent survey in Chicago, and that 61% of them said yes?
Yes, I am. I'm also aware that over 70% of them said that the practice should not be legalized.
But according to the survey, it's a rather common medical practice. Just one more question, Doctor. How much was it costing Mr. Fryman to survive the last few months of his life?
Oh, about $100 a day for the hospital and drugs, plus physician's fees.
Times 7 days a week for the 8 months he might have survived, plus the 7.5 months he'd already been there, that comes to $46,500, plus physician's fees. Thank you, Doctor. That'll be all.
And I submit, Your Honor, that Officer Taylor's testimony clearly shows that he was on a well-lighted street and close enough to the defendant to see him drop the envelope which contained marijuana cigarettes. And that after conducting a routine interrogation, he allowed the suspect to enter the bar, where very logically he knew he could find him if necessary after examining the contents of the envelope.
Just a minute, please, Mr. Carlson. I'm sorry, but I have to tell you that nothing you're saying, not one word, makes any sense. But do go on.
Taylor's an experienced officer, Your Honor. I believe he had a perfectly logical reason to follow the procedure he described.
No, I don't agree with you, but go on.
I have nothing more, Your Honor.
Mr. Darrell? Your Honor, I know how difficult it is in some courts to find in favor of the defendant in a case like this one, when by doing so it might imply that the arresting officer had lied on the witness stand. Now, the defense is not accusing Officer Taylor of deliberate falsehood. We're all fallible, especially when under distress. It's not uncommon for us to
honestly think we see something when we don't.
Yes. Thank you, Your Honor. I submit that Officer Taylor was merely mistaken by what he observed, and that his testimony was further clouded by the unorthodox procedure he followed prior to the arrest. I think, Your Honor, will agree that the people's case has not been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, and that justice will best be served by a verdict of acquittal.
You're quite right, Mr. Darrell. I find considerably more than reasonable doubt here. Case dismissed. Court will recess for 20 minutes. Well, Mr. Mobley, if you're smoking grass, you better quit.
I can't believe it, man.
What can't you believe?
I mean, that a dude like that, you know, that ain't a brother, would run it down the way he did.
That dude happens to be one of the best judges there is. You don't know how lucky you are.
Oh, but I do. I had one of the best lawyers there is.
I didn't win it for you. He lost it. Next time he might come up against some big competition.
I can take it. But don't worry about me. I'm gonna stay so clean that I'm never gonna need you again.
I hope so. Even though I could use the bread.
Thanks.
Take it easy.
You know, Mr. Darrell, I've heard a lot about you, and now I just want to ask you one question. You really believe your client was innocent?
Whether he's guilty or not doesn't concern me. I get paid to represent him, which happens to be my line of work.
Now go back out on the street and push up the crime rate. You ought to give that a little thought.
Oh, come on, now look. Now, I wasn't going to say anything, but since you're the one coming on with the moral indignation bit, let me give you something to think about. You get paid to represent the people, and you blew it before you even came in here this morning.
Like hell I did.
Like hell you didn't. You presented an incompetent case, and to top it, your key witness lied.
Lied?
Yes, lied, and you know it. You had to know Taylor didn't make the arrest until after my client went into the bar because he didn't see the envelope until then. But you had him try to cover up with a dumb story. Didn't have me or the judge fooled, not for a second. You blew the case because you put an incompetent witness on the stand. You let my client go free. For all I know, he's guilty.
Now, wait just a second.
You know, I may be your opponent in court, but I'm also one of the people. And it really shakes me up to know that there's someone like you in the system representing me.
I'm not putting you in a position to be cross-examined, and that's final.
I'm sorry, but it's not.
Do you have any idea what Cooper will do to you? He'll leave that jury with no choice but a verdict of guilty, and there won't be one single thing I can do about it.
I know what you're saying, but it's my life, and I guess I can do anything I want with it.
That may be true, but I don't see why you're paying for my advice if you intend to throw it right out the window. Now, you keep forgetting that many people, me, for example, don't believe in the principle of mercy killing.
I'm sorry, Mr. Darrell. There's something I want to say on that witness stand that's important to me. And if you won't let me do it, I'll tell the judge I want a different lawyer.
Let the record show that the defendant, all counsel, and jury are present. Oh, no. Thank you.
The lady in the black hat. You.
Me?
Yes, I'm going to ask you to leave this courtroom. In fact, you're to leave this floor. If you're seen anywhere in the area during the remainder of this trial, I'm going to have you taken into custody and charged with contempt.
Can I make a statement?
No, you may not.
Can you tell me where I go to get my civil rights?
Madam, if you don't leave immediately, I'm going to ask the bailiff to take you into custody and escort you out of this courtroom.
What about my civil rights?
All right, bailiff.
You don't need to get physical. I'll escort myself.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you remember at the beginning of this trial, I admonished you not to discuss this case with anyone. I even told you that you were not to discuss it with each other until such time as all evidence had been presented and you were ready for your deliberations. Now, is there any one of you who feels he can no longer serve as a fair or impartial juror because of any statement made by that woman during the recess? Good. I hesitate to impugn anyone's reputation. But that woman is known in the Hall of Justice as a crackpot. So any statement that she made about this or any other trial should be completely disregarded.
Do you resent the fact that your mother has been seeing other men since her divorce from your father?
No.
Do you resent the fact that your mother's been seeing Roger Elmore steadily for the past several months?
No. Not until he did what he did.
Didn't you even resent the fact that your mother and Mr. Elmore have been seriously talking about getting married?
I've told you I didn't think anything about Mr. Elmore.
Even though if he and your mother were married, it would mean your mother and your father would be separated forever? Laurel, would you lie to keep that from happening?
Your Honor, I'm going to make the same objection.
And I'm going to overrule it. You may answer the question, Miss Brooks.
Please answer the question, Laurel. Would you lie to prevent your mother from marrying Mr. Elmore?
I don't know. Maybe I would. But I'm not lying about this. It all happened just the way I said it did.
Is the defense ready, Mr. Darrow?
Your Honor, I move for acquittal on the grounds that the people have failed to establish a prima facie case against the defendant, James Fryman.
Your motion is denied, Mr. Darrow. Are you ready with the defense?
Ready, Your Honor.
Very well, then, you may proceed.
Your Honor, I'm calling the first witness for the defense with the greatest reluctance. But before he takes the stand, I wish to say to the court and to the members of the jury that I strongly feel that if my client were to exercise his absolute right not to testify, he could never be found guilty as charged of murder in the first degree on the evidence presented. However, my client feels there are things he must say publicly as a matter of principle, and he has insisted on testifying. Mr. Fryman, did you have a good relationship with your father?
Yes, the best. He was all the things the prosecutor said he was. He was decent, honorable, hardworking, and he was totally unselfish.
You loved each other very much then, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
How long was he in the hospital?
7.5 months.
Did you visit him during that time?
Almost every day.
Did it appear to you that he was suffering much pain?
Yes, but he could handle physical pain. He was tough in that way. In every other way, he was the most gentle person I ever knew.
Was he a rich man?
If you mean, did we have a lot of money? No. We always lived comfortably. He worked very hard to see to that.
Is your mother still living?
Yes.
Is she here in the courtroom?
No. She hasn't been feeling well since my father's death. She's home under a doctor's care.
How did your father react when he learned that his condition was terminal?
Well, at first he was very brave, but little by little, the longer he stayed in that hospital, the more he suffered. I've never seen that kind of anguish before.
You said the longer he stayed in that hospital, was there something wrong with the quality of care in that particular hospital?
No, that wasn't it. The hospital was fine, but it was terribly expensive. They all are.
Didn't your father have medical insurance?
Yes, he did. It was the kind that worked fine if you got sick and missed a few weeks' work. Didn't even begin to pay for his illness.
How are you able to pay the bills?
Out of his savings. My father always put a little money away each year for his and my mother's retirement. That plus I dropped out of school and got a job. And then we put the house up for sale.
How did your father react to that?
Well, he couldn't stand the idea that the same thing that was killing him was destroying his family financially. He didn't want to die knowing that my mother would have no financial security, would have nothing.
On the day your father died, up to that time, do you know the dollar cost of his illness?
It was over $70,000.
And another 8 months would have cost another $70,000.
Yes.
You said you'd taken a job. Couldn't your mother work too?
Well, my father didn't want that. It was very important to him. Well, toward the end, he kept saying that she deserves to live with dignity. The dignity that he had provided for her. But he just had to lie there and see it being all wiped out. That's why he suffered, Mr. Darrow. That's what he couldn't come to terms with. Every day when I went to visit him, he kept saying the same thing over and over again. Don't let this go on happening, Jimmy. Please, help me, help me. One day, he grabbed a hold of my wrist, and he held on with a strength that I didn't even know he had. And he told me exactly what he wanted me to do. And he wasn't begging me anymore. He was telling me what he wanted me to do. And I couldn't say no anymore. And so I said I would. And I did.
No more questions, Sherman.
Cross-examination, Mr. Cooper?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Fryman, did you kill your father?
Yes.
Tell the jury in your own words exactly how you took your own father's life.
Well, I waited until there was no one else in the room. I waited until there was no one else in the room, and I put a pillow over his face.
Go on.
That's all.
That can't be all, Mr. Fryman. Putting a pillow over someone's face can't kill him. Holding it there, pressing it down so the oxygen supply is choked off so the victim suffocates isn't that a fact?
Objection, Your Honor. This isn't proper cross-examination. It's pure harassment.
Sustained.
Was it a spur-of-the-moment decision to kill your father?
Do you think a person can make that kind of a decision on the spur of the moment?
Fortunately for you, what I think is not relevant to these proceedings. I take it your answer means you planned what you did very carefully.
Objection. Counsel's interpretation of the witness's answer is also irrelevant to these proceedings.
Sustained. Rephrase your question, Mr. Cooper.
Did you or did you not carefully plan the killing of your father?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Did you go to the hospital that day having already made the decision to kill your father?
Yes. He asked me to do it. I did what he wanted me to do.
Yes, all those times he begged you to kill him. Tell me, Mr. Fryman, did anyone else ever hear him do this besides you?
No. I don't believe so, no.
I see, but you did have his rational consent.
If you mean he gave me his consent by asking me to do it, yes.
On the day you committed this act, did your father beg you to kill him?
No. They'd given him extra sedation that morning. He didn't say anything. He was barely conscious.
Did it ever occur to you, assuming these alleged requests were made in the first place, he might have been so racked with pain or filled with painkillers, he might have been incapable of rational consent?
Objection. Calls for a conclusion from the witness.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Either it occurred to him or it didn't occur to him.
You may answer that question.
No, it never occurred to me. He was always rational, in spite of everything that was happening to him.
Did it occur to you, on the day you took your own father's life, on the day he didn't beg you to kill him, he might have changed his mind?
Of course not! If you would have been there to see him, if you would have seen him for yourself, you'd never ask a question like that.
Your Honor, this time I didn't ask for a conclusion, but that's exactly what I got.
Yes, it is, Mr. Cooper, and I'm going to ask everything after the direct answer, of course, not be stricken from the record. The jury is to disregard it.
At this time, the defense wishes to call Owen Hubbard.
Here's your right hand. Solemnly swear on the matter now before this court to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your name and spell it for the record.
Owen Hubbard, Hubbard.
Be seated.
Mr. Hubbard, do you know Officer Frank Wyatt?
Yes, I do.
Do you see him in the courtroom now?
Yes?
Will you please point him out?
It's right over there.
Let the record show that the witness has properly identified Officer Frank Wyatt. How do you know Frank Wyatt?
I used to do some favors for him when he was working narco.
You were one of his informants, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Were you working for him on July 8th of this year?
Yes.
Will you please tell the court what happened that day?
I got a line on somebody who was selling a horse using the Carter Hotel over on 6th as home plate. I took Wyatt over to get him straight with her so he could make a buy and get her busted.
Get who busted?
I don't know what her name was. It was Sharon or Sherry, something like that.
The woman who sold the heroin to Officer Wyatt, do you see her in the courtroom now?
No, I don't.
Do you know the defendant, Hilda Tibbet?
Yeah, I know her from around, you know, hello and goodbye.
Was Hilda Tibbet the woman you introduced Officer Wyatt to? Was she the woman he purchased the heroin from?
Hilda, no, I told you it was something like Sharon or Sherry.
Are you absolutely positive of that?
100% certain.
No more questions. Your witness.
Mr. Hubbard, were you working for Officer Wyatt on June 30th of this year?
I think so.
Did you give Officer Wyatt information which led to the arrest of one Arnold Smith?
Oh, you mean Smitty? Yeah, sure.
And did you subsequently testify for the defense in contradiction to Officer Wyatt's testimony when Arnold Smith's case came to trial?
Yes.
Did you also aid Officer Wyatt in the arrest of one Joseph Michael Curtin?
Yes.
And did you also testify for the defense when that case came to trial?
Yes.
Wait a minute. How many more of those cases are there?
3, Your Honor.
And Mr. Hubbard testified for the defense in all these other cases?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Hubbard, are you unhappy with the police department?
No.
Are you unhappy with the court system?
I'm not unhappy with anyone, Your Honor.
I notice you're now in custody. How long have you been in jail?
Since the middle of September.
On what charge?
Burglary.
And did you expect Officer Wyatt and other members of the police force to come to your aid when you were arrested?
No.
Even after all the valuable service that you seem to give them?
Getting me out of jams wasn't part of the deal. They said that themselves.
Was that before or after you were arrested? I have a good mind to add perjury to the burglary charge. Let me continue, Mr. Reed.
I have no more questions, Your Honor.
Redirect, Mr. Darrow.
Do you wish for any reason to change your testimony, Mr. Hubbard?
Why, not at all. I told you everything exactly as I remember it.
Do you know what perjury is?
It's a felony. Section 118 of the Penal Code.
I'm sure you're aware of the penalty, too.
Perjury is punishable.
Never mind, Mr. Hubbard. Did you testify here voluntarily?
Yes.
Were you offered anything by me or any of my associates in return for testifying for the defense in this case?
No, sir, I was not.
Thank you. No more questions.
You're excused from this courtroom, Mr. Hubbard.
Nice going.
Court will recess for 20 minutes.
It wasn't a bit nice. Our star witness just got shot down in flames, and our case went down with him. Did you know what he was up to? And you didn't bother to tell me?
I'm sorry.
Well, don't feel sorry for me. You're the one that's gonna have to do the time.
And it was my deep conviction that without the defendant's own testimony, the people's case was too circumstantial, lacking the substance to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. But James Fryman took that stand and confessed his guilt to the world and to you 12 people who hold the power of life and death over him. Why did he testify? Why? He did it because there's a lot of his father in him. His father selflessly begged for death because to prolong his life would mean to destroy what he devoted that life to create, a legacy for his family. And his son, James Fryman, who might have walked out of this courtroom a free man, chose to confess because he decided that by telling the whole truth, he could give some meaning to his father's tragic pain and death. By so doing, he spoke out publicly against the social condition in our country which is deplorable and unacceptable. A condition in our system of health care which discriminates against only one part of society. In this case, an oppressed majority rather than minority group. When catastrophic disease strikes, and let me remind you, it can strike at any time without discrimination, it is only the very rich and the very poor who can escape financial disaster. It is the middle-class citizen, like most of us right here in this courtroom, who is thrust into bankruptcy when major illness occurs. When a man's health, his most precious possession, is taken away, it is unconscionable that he is forced to carry the extra cruel and unusual burden, like James Fryman's father did, of seeing what he spent his life to build, what he's worked and sacrificed for, taken away as well. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that a system which allows this condition to exist is sicker than the poor souls who suffer at its hand. And any man who chooses to speak out against it, like James Fryman did at the price James Fryman paid, deserves the length and breadth of your humanity. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please remember that in asking for acquittal, we are not asking you to condone the principle of euthanasia. We are asking merely for justice to be served in this very special, very individual case. Now, if you find James Fryman innocent, the state, the people, will not have lost. The people never lose when justice is served. Thank you.
Yes, my daughter dated quite often. She was very popular.
How old was she when she started dating?
14.
Without a chaperone?
Yes.
And you approved?
Yes, I did. She was very mature for her age.
I see. Would you also consider her to be very intelligent for her age?
Yes, I would.
With a very vivid imagination?
Yes.
Could you give the court an example of your daughter's vivid imagination? What form of expression it took?
Yes. She was always daydreaming. She did a lot of writing.
Writing?
Yes, poems, short stories. All very creative.
Have you ever seen this before?
Yes, it's one of the stories that Laurel wrote.
And you recognize that as Laurel's handwriting?
Yes, I do.
When were you first aware of the story written by your daughter?
It was over a year ago.
That was before the alleged encounter with Mr. Elmore?
Yes, more than a year before.
Your Honor, I would like to enter this short story written by Laurel Brooks more than 1 year ago into evidence as a defense exhibit number 1 for identification. I'd like to read some excerpts from it for the court.
So ordered.
How'd you do? I don't know. Jury's got it. How about you?
I won one I should have lost and lost one I thought I had in my back pocket.
And then he started pulling at my clothes and kissing me. The sweat from our bodies mingled, and his breath was very hot. I struggled and tried to break away, but he was too strong. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The rest of it was like a terrible nightmare. I remember hoping and praying that I'd wake up and find it was only a dream, but
That's enough. I want to change my plea to guilty. Laurel is being publicly labeled as a sick, pathologic liar, and I can't sit back and watch it happen.
Your Honor, the defendant has worked with young people all of his life, and it's understandable and rightly commendable that he would be moved by the ordeal Laurel Brooks is going through. I'd like to request a recess so that...
No. The story she wrote is just a coincidence. I want to change my plea because the story she told here is true. Every word of it.
Mr. Elmore, I'll have to advise you not to say anything more until you had a chance to discuss this with your attorney. This court is on recess until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Is that enough time, Mr. Nichols?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
You don't have to represent me anymore, Mr. Nichols. I understand.
You thought I'd work a lot harder for you if I thought you were innocent, is that it?
Well, yes, I suppose that is why I lied. Yes.
Well, you were wrong. You still need the best attorney you can get, which happens to be me. I want to see you at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
No, we have not, Your Honor. And I'm afraid that a unanimous decision will be impossible.
Well, isn't it a little too soon to come to that conclusion?
It may seem that way, Your Honor, but we are hopelessly divided, and any further deliberations appear to be quite pointless.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but the people have gone to a great deal of expense to try this case. Now, I would think you as jurors would examine the facts and issues in depth before you throw in the towel.
Your Honor, 4 members of this jury, including myself, are adamant that the defendant be acquitted. Now, I know I can never be persuaded to change my mind, and I think I can speak for the other 3 who feel exactly as I do.
You don't believe further deliberation might change your attitude?
No, Your Honor. That boy put his life on the line to expose one of the ugliest social problems we have in this country. I can never be persuaded to change my mind.
All right. Due to the fact the jury cannot reach a verdict, I declare this a mistrial. Oh, the jury is dismissed. If it's acceptable to counsel, I'll schedule a date for retrial to commence 30 days from now. Court is adjourned.
Funny, I don't know how to react to this.
Then take a cue from me and be happy.
About another trial?
Sure. Next time you won't have that compulsion to take the stand.
I think it's even money there won't be another trial.
Sure be a pity, wouldn't it? If the taxpayers had to go to all that expense just to get stuck with another hung jury.
I don't know how to thank you.
Then don't. Go on, go tell your mother. Let her hear the news from you.
certain you'll be all right? I can come in and stay for a while. Jess and Freddie don't expect me home from the funeral till after 5 anyway.
No, really, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right.
Mrs. McKay?
Yes,
Are you Ellen McKay?
yes.
I'm Sergeant Sorensen. This is Detective Conley. Mrs. McKay, you're under arrest for the murder of Lloyd McKay. You have the right to remain silent. If you give up the right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to speak with an attorney, to have the attorney present with you during questioning. If you so desire and you can't afford one, an attorney will be appointed for you without charge before questioning. Do you understand each of these rights?
Mrs. McKay? I'm Brian Darrell. Your attorney, Victor Peel, asked my firm to take your case.
Get me out of here.
Yes, just a few things I'd like to establish first.
I don't care about any of that. Just get me out of here now, today.
Mrs. McKay,
What kind of place is this? They were at me in the shower. 4 of them. They pushed me down on the tire in that filthy water. My hair was... I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe.
I'll get you out of here, Mrs. McKay.
Please come in, just for a minute. I need a drink, and I think I'm still too shaky to mix one.
All right. Just for a moment.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but does my being allowed to come home on bail mean that the police have a pretty feeble case against me?
No, I wouldn't say that, unfortunately. No, the police have a strong case against you. Their evidence is circumstantial, but it's strong.
The police have a strong case against me when I didn't do it.
He called me 2 days before they found him dead. He said he was going back to his wife. Guess I knew just by the way he said it that he really meant it. Next thing I knew, he was dead.
And you never spoke with Lloyd McKay again?
No.
Thank you, Miss Bowers. Your witness, Mr. Darrell?
Miss Bowers, how did you react to that last phone call from Lloyd McKay? When he told you that he'd be seeing you no more, that he was going back to his wife?
I was heartbroken.
You weren't angry or intensely hurt after a year-long love affair?
No, I was just very sad, that's all.
Weren't you hurt by the fact that he merely called you on the phone to tell you he was breaking off the relationship? That he didn't even bother to at least confront you personally?
No. I mean, Lloyd he wasn't even the type for sentimental goodbyes. I hated the thought that Lloyd and I were going to not see each other anymore, but I didn't hold it against him.
Miss Bowers, can you tell the court what you were doing on the night of February 24th, the night Lloyd McKay died?
I was at home.
Alone?
Yes.
Did you receive any phone calls, say, after 8 o'clock?
No, I didn't.
I see. Then you can't actually prove to this court what you were doing that night.
Objection, Your Honor. That question calls for a conclusion on the part of the witness. Sustained.
Mr. Darrell, you do seem to be fishing. Please ask direct questions of fact.
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Bowers, were you at Lake Arrowhead on the night in question?
No. I was at home playing records.
Thank you, Miss Bowers. By the way, were you born in California?
Yes.
You've lived all your life in Southern California?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all.
Do you really think Stella Bowers might have killed Lloyd?
Dr. Schaefer, I only know two things about Stella Bowers. One, she had a motive to kill your son-in-law. And two, she can't prove where she was the night of the murder. Now, I've pointed these two things out to the jury because our case depends, well, partly on the accident theory, but also on the theory of the plausible alternative. That is, presenting the jury with other people who may have had motive and opportunity to kill Lloyd McKay.
Mr. Darrow, you should find a bumper crop of your plausible alternatives. Lloyd had an enormous talent for bringing out the worst in people.
I had no idea it was so late. Can I interest you two in joining me for dinner?
As much as I'd like to, I can't. My doctor's got me on a special diet. And a 9 o'clock curfew. It's surprising he doesn't come over and tuck me in at night.
Good night, Dad.
But thank you, Mr. Darrow. Good night.
Good night, Doctor.
Oh, my doctor hasn't ordered me to bed at 9 o'clock. Does your offer still stand?
Like a rock.
Sir Whitmore, what is your occupation? I'm head of promotion at Nova Records. Do you know the defendant, Ellen McKay? I spoke with her once. When and where did this meeting take place? At Mrs. McKay's home in Bel Air on February 22nd. And what was the substance of your conversation? I told Mrs. McKay that her husband was having an affair with Stella Bowers, that it had been going on for over a year. The devastating news. How did Mrs. McKay react? Quietly. She became very pale, and then she turned away from me. She didn't say anything? Yes, she, something like, "Thank you for coming to me." It was hard to hear her. She was staring out the window and didn't say any more. So I left. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. Your witness, Mr. Darrow.
Mr. Whitmore, you testified that the first time you met Ellen McKay was the day you brought her the news about her husband and Stella Bowers. Now, what prompted you to do that?
Stella and I had a beautiful thing going. Then she met McKay and walked out on me. I tried to forget her, but I couldn't. And I decided that if Mrs. McKay knew what her husband was up to, she'd force him to leave Stella alone.
Lloyd McKay is no competition to you anymore, is he?
Well, no.
Lloyd McKay died on February 24th. Where were you that night, Mr. Whitmore?
I was home. I tried to call Stella, but there was no answer. I figured she was probably home, but that she thought I was calling and decided not to answer. I had to see her, so I drove to her apartment. The lights were out, but I figured she'd be going in or coming out sometime, and I decided to wait it out.
What time did you get to her apartment?
About 8:30. I waited in my car until 5 in the morning. Stella never showed up, so I left.
I see. Well, now, as far as you know, did anyone see you out there sitting in your car all night? Anyone who could support what you've just said?
I don't think so. The street was pretty quiet.
Mr. Whitmore, you once owned a home at Lake Arrowhead?
I was part owner, yes.
Well, then you, unlike Miss Bowers, know where Lake Arrowhead is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you've already testified that you wanted to see Stella Bowers and Lloyd McKay separated. Did you want that badly enough to bludgeon Lloyd McKay and throw his body into the...
Objection, Your Honor. That is improper cross-examination.
Sustained. Rephrase the question, please, Mr. Darrow.
Mr. Whitmore, did you kill Lloyd McKay?
No, I didn't.
That's all.
If it pleases the court, the prosecution wishes to recall Stella Bowers to the stand.
I did hear the phone ring about 8:30, yes.
Why didn't you answer it?
Because I was sure it was Mr. Whitmore, and I didn't want to speak to him.
Didn't you wonder if it mightn't have been Lloyd McKay on the phone rather than Paul Whitmore?
When Lloyd said goodbye to me, I knew I would never see or hear from him again. I knew who was on the phone and what he wanted.
Why were there no lights on in your apartment?
I was listening to records. My stereo is in the bedroom, and with the bedroom door closed, the entire apartment looks completely dark, unless you go around to the back of the building.
Thank you, Miss Bowers. Your witness, Mr. Darrow.
Miss Bowers, I gather you were being absolutely literal when you told me that you received no phone calls because you didn't actually answer the phone. Now we learn the phone rang. And when it did ring, just 2 days after Lloyd McKay left you heartbroken, to use your word, you didn't jump to answer it on the hope that it might have been Lloyd McKay.
Objection, Your Honor. That question's already been asked and answered.
Sustained.
No more questions.
You may step down, Miss Bowers.
Oh, it's cold.
I told you it was still a little early in the year for midnight dips.
I know, it was wonderful. I bet you were a super Boy Scout when you were a kid.
Matter of fact, I was low man on the Beaver Patrol. I couldn't get the hang of fire building.
Oh, just my luck.
All right. Let's see what we can do here. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Look at this.
Oh,
Look at this
bravo!
excitement. Oh, first fire that ever turned out right for me. It'll inspire me. Oh, yeah. Oh, put your ear right here. Right here.
Huh?
Your ear. Huh. That's how my father used to get us to eat crunchy vegetables.
No.
This is...
What?
Well, it's dangerous for an attorney. This, I mean, getting involved with a client, I think it's frowned upon.
It's dangerous for me, too. Is that what you call this? Getting involved with a client? You're not in court now.
No. You know, you make a pretty good lawyer yourself. All right, then what about, I think I'm falling in love. I think I'm falling in love with you. Is that more precise? Dr. Steerforth, can you tell us approximately what the average water temperature is at Lake Arrowhead in February?
Oh, 57, 58 degrees.
Would it surprise you to know that it averages out at about 42 degrees?
No, wouldn't surprise me.
Doctor, the body had been in extremely cold water for hours before it got to you. Are you prepared to state here and now, unequivocally, that Lloyd McKay died at 2 a.m. and not at 5 or after, as Mrs. McKay will testify?
Sir, scientists don't deal in certainties. We deal in high degrees of probability. As an authority, I can tell you the highest degree of probability rests with the verdict that Lloyd McKay died between 2 and 3 a.m.
No, I don't think Lloyd McKay died accidentally in that boat.
Well, what leads you to say that, Mr. McMahon?
That boat, she'll throw you into the clear. Maybe it all could have been accidental in a gale on the North Atlantic, but not on Lake Arrowhead.
Not hungry?
All right, when do we get down to business?
Business?
I knew from the moment I got into the car that we weren't just going to have dinner. We're going to a meeting.
Took you to dinner last night. What's so different about tonight?
That's what I want you to tell me.
All right. There is something I want to talk about. Helen, all during the trial, I've tried to keep it in the jurors' minds that your husband's death may have been accidental. Now, the coroner and that boat designer closed the door hard on that one. I have to drop it.
You don't think Lloyd's death was an accident?
I don't think the jury will buy it as a possibility.
You think Lloyd was murdered? Who do you think did it? Stella Bowers, Paul Whitmore?
They're plausible alternatives, yes. But with the accident theory out, I've got to do something I was hoping I wouldn't have to do. I've got to put your father on the stand, Helen.
No, I can't let you do that.
Helen, he has practically said he has no way of proving he was home that night. And he is a plausible alternative, possibly the best one we have.
Ryan, he's sick. I mean, you don't know how ill he is.
I'm not going to browbeat him or grill him. I'll be very gentle, I promise you.
Well, can you tell him beforehand? I mean, let him know what you're going to do.
No, I can't do that. It'll look rehearsed. But I will be gentle.
How can you possibly be gentle with someone whom you're accusing them of murder?
I won't be accusing him of murder. I'll merely be showing the jury that there are others who could have killed your husband.
But you've tried to do that with Stella Bowers and Paul Whitmore. Ryan, I am not going to let you put my father on the stand.
You're gonna have to let me do it, Ellen. I just want to get another attorney. Ellen. Ellen. Ellen.
You wouldn't be trying to put him on the stand if you didn't think he was guilty.
I think he might be, yes. Ellen.
Ryan, you're wrong. You couldn't have done it.
Ellen, don't you think your father will be happy to take the stand if it means helping you? And I'll be very easy with him, I promise you that. Come on now, let's go back. You were president of Moncourt College until the summer of 1970. Didn't a severe heart attack cause your retirement that year?
That's correct.
And how is your health today?
I'm still here. After the coronary I suffered, that's quite an accomplishment.
Well, to be more specific, let's see. Do you play golf, Doctor?
Yes. Love the game.
Do you drive a car?
Yes.
Dr. Schaefer, did you get along well with your son-in-law?
No. We didn't get along too well.
Did you and Lloyd McKay quarrel often?
I couldn't stand the man. He seemed to enjoy goading decent and sensible people into foolish and ugly disputes. A vain, vulgar, narrow-minded man. I could never understand what my daughter saw in him.
A man you felt was several steps beneath your daughter.
Your Honor, I object to the tack counsel is taking. He knows perfectly well that he can't lead his own witness. Now, if for some strange reason he considers this man a hostile witness, let him so declare it.
Your Honor, may we approach the bench?
Yes.
Your Honor, Mr. Wahlberg is correct. I do wish to declare this witness hostile. I feel he has reason to protect himself, as the court will see.
What you say had best prove to be so, Mr. Darrow. However, for the moment, you may deal with this man as a hostile witness.
Dr. Schaefer, to get back to your feelings about Lloyd McKay, would you have been happy if your daughter had divorced him?
I most certainly would have been.
Where were you on the night of your son-in-law's death, Doctor?
I was at home alone, Mr. Darrow.
Did you receive any phone calls or see anyone?
A friend was over to play chess. He left at 9 p.m. That's the bedtime my physician has prescribed for me. I went directly to bed. And I didn't see or speak to anyone till about 10 the next morning when I said hello to the woman next door.
I see. Then, as far as you know, you have no way of proving that you were home all night.
It appears that way.
Doctor, you testified that your heart condition doesn't prevent you from driving a car. Do you know the way to Lake Arrowhead?
Naturally. My daughter has a house there.
Thank you, Doctor. There's no more questions.
Dr. Schaefer, in addition to prescribing a 9 o'clock curfew, has your doctor also prohibited you from physical exertion? Not golfing, certainly, but say tennis or mountain climbing?
Those activities are contraindicated.
You mean tussling or lifting a very heavy weight? For example, an unconscious man might be dangerous, even fatal for you.
All I can tell you is that my physician has advised me to avoid the sorts of things you mentioned.
No, there was no quarrel. Lloyd started drinking. And, as usual, advanced his theory that our troubles were the result of my father's interference. He started shouting. And he kept on shouting. But I knew from experience that the best thing to do was to let him go on. So I said nothing. And finally he began to slow down, and he even apologized.
And then you both went to sleep?
Yes. Well, or so I thought. Apparently, Lloyd didn't sleep very well. I woke up, but looked at the clock. It was 5 a.m., and he came into the room dressed. He complained about not sleeping well, but he seemed cheerful. He said he was going out on the lake to catch my breakfast for me. The sheriff woke me at 8 o'clock to tell me that Lloyd was dead.
Mrs. McKay, did you kill your husband?
No, I didn't.
Thank you very much. No more questions. Mr. Wahlberg, you may cross-examine.
Mrs. McKay, 2 days after Paul Whitmore told you that your husband was cheating on you, you went with your husband to a woodland setting for a romantic interlude. Now, is that what you're trying to tell us?
We went to the lake to try and put our life back together.
You didn't feel the slightest twinge of anger, resentment, hostility?
No. No, I think I felt relieved that everything was finally out in the open.
Did you hear Mr. Utley's testimony that he heard you and your husband quarreling in the early hours of February 24th? He heard two voices, yours and your husband's.
I heard him, yes.
But Mr. Utley's testimony is in direct conflict with what you said. Now, you stated that only your husband was shouting, that you remained quiet and calm. Now, do you feel that Mr. Utley perjured himself? Is he a liar?
I don't think he's a liar, no.
Well, Mrs. McKay, someone is lying here. Is Mr. Utley's testimony untrue?
Yes, it is untrue.
In other words, Mr. Utley, your caretaker must be lying. He wants to see you falsely convicted. He wants to do you injury. Why? Does he hate you? Is he a compulsive liar? A maniac?
Objection!
What, Mrs. McKay?
Objection! Defendant has no way of knowing how the caretaker feels about her or whether or not he is sane.
Sustained.
Mrs. McKay, let's get to the essentials here. Isn't it true that you and your husband quarreled over his outside love interests?
Objection. Prosecution's question is blatantly argumentative.
Mr. Darrow, the court allowed considerable latitude in your cross-examinations. Prosecution is entitled to the same. Your objection is overruled. Continue, Mr. Wahlberg.
Mrs. McKay, weren't you, in fact, arguing with your husband that night? Didn't you shout and scream as much as he? Didn't you bring something crashing down on his head? And didn't you then drown him?
Objection! Objection! Not only is the prosecutor bullying and intimidating the witness, he's asked her 4 questions without giving her a chance to answer one of them.
Well taken, Mr. Darrow. Mr. Wahlberg, would you like the defendant to answer your questions, or should we dispense with her entirely and give the stand over to you?
I am sorry, Your Honor.
Well, if you can control your oratory, you may continue.
Thank you. Now, Mrs. McKay, did you strike your husband?
No.
Didn't you argue with him that night? Didn't you shout and scream at each other like Mr. Utley said you did?
No, I didn't do any of those things.
Hey, how are you? How can you sleep on a bed like that? Is that your pool table? Man, that's hard.
Most of the people who break into my apartment find the bed very comfortable.
What do you get so jumpy about? It was your idea to exchange keys in case of an emergency, wasn't it?
Well, what's the emergency?
Well, not exactly an emergency. I just wanted to talk, that's all.
Yeah, you want to talk about Ellen's trial, and in particular, you want to tell me that I'm wrong to stay on the case and I'm too personally involved.
Well, I guess that's that. It's really got you, doesn't it, Brian? Look, if it's bothering you that much, why haven't you done anything about it?
Do what about it? Me give the problem some thought. I've done that. I've decided the best thing to do is stay on the case.
Yeah, I can see that. All things considered, you think you can provide competent, objective counsel for Ellen?
Would I still be on the case if I thought I couldn't? Now, come on, Neil, it's late.
Brian, who are you kidding? Now, you know it's one of the primary rules of law that when you get personally involved with a client, you're liable to make very large mistakes.
That is a generalization, a facile one at that. But even granting what you say, I can tell you now it doesn't apply in this case.
All right. All right, for the moment, let's say that's true, huh? Look, Brian, why not let Walt handle the summation at least, huh? Take advantage of his specialty, rapport with jurors. You know, when they see that 250 pounds of towering authority staring at them, they listen. When he flashes those baby blues, they believe. Come on.
It's too late. It wouldn't be fair to Walt to ask him to step in now.
No, just ask him. If he begs off, well, then that's it.
Well, I think you handled the case very well, considering what you had to work with. There isn't anything that I could say in the summation that you couldn't, so why change horses now?
Because you're the best horse for the job, Walt. We both know it.
Brian, I have to tell you that I don't think that we stand much of a chance winning this one. No matter who makes the summation. Facts are simply laid out against us. I can't change that. It's almost 11:30, ladies and gentlemen, and you've been generously patient and attentive. I'm going to leave you in peace soon with one final point. Mr. Wahlberg here set out on a certain path to prove that Ellen McKay murdered her husband. Now all the evidence has been heard. We've gone down Mr. Wahlberg's path with him, and where have we arrived? we've arrived at the conclusion that, yes, Lloyd McKay may have been murdered, but did Ellen McKay commit that murder or somebody else? Surely there have been others on this stand who, by their own admission, had reason to kill Lloyd McKay and the opportunity. But the state has picked Ellen McKay to stand trial for this murder. Why? Because she was there. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your duty to demand of the state reason proof, not sheer coincidence. Now, if you demand those things, you'll demand that Ellen McKay be set free. I do thank you for your patience.
Your Honor, I have a few words in rebuttal summation.
Go ahead, Mr. Wahlberg.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nichols' extended and somewhat convoluted plea is trying to dismiss the case against Ellen McKay, saying that the evidence against her was merely circumstantial. Now, let me tell you what Supreme Court Justice Robert Greer said about circumstantial evidence. A cord of sufficient strength to suspend a man may be formed of threads, each of which would not support the weight of a pound or even an ounce. Now, Ellen McKay was at Lake Arrowhead the night Lloyd McKay was murdered. Can Mr. Nichols give one scintilla of proof that any of his suspects were there? Ellen McKay was heard quarreling viciously with her husband that same night.
I'm afraid I'm not very hungry. I won't be until the verdict is in.
Juries can deliberate for months, Doctor. I wouldn't advise going without food for that long a time.
No, thank you, Dave.
What?
All right.
I'm a doctor.
It's a...
Get an ambulance. Will the foreman of the jury please hand the verdict to the bailiff?
We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Ellen McKay, not guilty of murder in the first degree. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant guilty of murder in the second degree.
Ellen McKay, this court has found you guilty of murder in the second degree. You are remanded to the sheriff's custody until such time as this court can reconvene to determine the penalty to be brought against you. The jury is dismissed with the court's thanks for your services. Court is adjourned.
Sorry, Ellen. But you know, of course, that there are other avenues open to us. Brian, I'll be down that coffee shop across the square.
I know how you feel. But I didn't ask to be alone with you so you could apologize to me. I have something to tell you, and I ask that you never repeat it to anyone, not to Mr. Nichols or your brother or anyone.
Of course.
I know that you feel disturbed, maybe even guilty because you lost the trial. But you didn't lose it. What happened wasn't your fault. You didn't let me down. That jury found me guilty because I am guilty.
Why are you saying this?
Because it's true.
Oh, now, Alan, don't tell me a thing like this just because you're afraid I'll spend the next 10 years of my life feeling guilty because I lost your case.
Well, that is the reason I'm telling you. But I'm also telling you the truth. I killed my husband.
Well, why didn't you tell me this before?
I couldn't. But I made up my mind if I was found guilty that I would tell you the truth. Because you've got to believe me. And forget about us.
Yeah?
There's a Mr. Swallow here to see Brian.
What's it about? Did he say?
Something about the Ellen McKay case.
Send him in, please.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Darrell, I'm Doyle Swallow.
I'm not Mr. Darrell. I'm Mr. Nichols. This is Mr. Darrell.
Ah.
I'm his associate.
Come on, Mr. Swallow. Please, sit down.
Yes, well, I have something here I'm sure will be of interest to you. I know it upset me no end. Where is it? Here. You see, I've been given permission to collect Dr. Paul Schaefer's letters and memorabilia for possible publication, and I came across this while looking through his collection of photographs from the days back at the University of Bologna. Strange place for a letter, I thought. As you can see, it has your name and address right at the top.
Yes, it's dated May 2nd. That's the day before he died. Dear Mr. Darrell, I want you to know that I hold no rancor against you for the manner in which you questioned me in court today. On the contrary, your questions were quite astute, and you are correct in your suspicions about me. I did, in fact, kill Lloyd McKay. I have not confessed because I am an old sick man who could not live through his own trial. Also, I do not expect Ellen to be found guilty. If, however, she is convicted of Lloyd's murder, I will come forward and confess. I am writing this letter to you now because I cannot afford to bank on the hope that my health will sustain me till the trial has ended. Should my illness incapacitate me, my testimony might be lost, and Ellen...
Go on.
That's it. It stops right there.
It isn't signed? Well, that shouldn't be a problem. It's dated. And a handwriting expert can remove all doubt about its authenticity.
But even if Dr. Schaefer did write the letters, we have no way of knowing whether they contain the truth. Now, Your Honor, I find it very easy to believe that Dr. Schaefer would confess to the murder to save his daughter. What father wouldn't? Especially if, in a case like this, he knew he wasn't likely to live long anyway. But to believe that a person in Schaefer's physical condition dealt a killing blow to a strapping 195-pound man and then dragged the heavy corpse to the lake, well, to put it mildly, it taxes my credulity.
Your Honor, it seems that Dr.
Gentlemen, we've already been around the track once with this thing. Whether or not the letter contains the truth or not is not for this court to decide. The handwriting has already been authenticated. Dr. Schaefer did write it. and is therefore clearly admissible as a declaration against interest under Section 1230 of the Evidence Code. Therefore, because of the introduction of this new evidence, I am going to grant your motion for a retrial, Mr. Darrow.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm sure that you already know that my office is not inclined to go through this again. I'm not convinced about the letter, but a jury probably would be, and it would be pointless to waste the taxpayers' money on a case that I don't think we could win.
All right. Mr. Darrow, your client will be released on bail pending dismissal of the information by the district attorney's office.
Your letters meant so much all those weeks. But I'm going away to Europe to live.
Why?
You know why. Even people who don't know what I told you that day believe that I'm guilty. But I told you I was, and you believe me.
I never said that.
No, but you did. Even my father's letter doesn't change that.
Yes, it does. Now, you told me that because you wanted to keep me from feeling that I'd failed you. Now, you would have been at that yourself.
Yes, I remember. But you'll never know if what I told you that day is the truth or a lie. You'll never be sure. And Brian, that's not much of a foundation to build a life on, is it? But what I'm saying is also true. I killed my husband. The police have a strong case against me when I didn't do it.